welcome everybody to the MiCorps CLMP um, Midsummer check-in, where Joe and I are going to be giving some reminders and other just little tips and tricks that are important for the CLMP and our procedures and rules and protocols. Um, what you can see here is, so we are in a Zoom meeting, and so that means we can hear you. You can go off of mute, and you can go to the bottom left of your screen, hit that microphone button, and you can ask us questions verbally. You can also, while we're presenting, use this chat feature right here. You click on the chat button and you can write us a question. Joe and I will be monitoring that chat throughout, and so we'll actually answer some of your um, questions via chat. And if it's a really good question that we want everybody to know, we might also repeat it out loud during our question and answer period. If you are running into any issues, you can check out this help desk number right there, and you can give them a call for any technical support you need. While we're talking, this is meant to be much more informal, even though we're on Zoom. So feel free to chat with us, or you can even unmute and say, "Oh, Joe, can you repeat that acronym?" That sort of thing. Feel free to do that. And Tamara is with us too, just in case folks for Tamara Lipsy is on, who's on our CLMP team. Hi, Tamara.
Hi there.
Let's see if I can. There we go. And so here's our summer check-in. Just quick introductions for Joe and I. My name is Erick Elgin. I'm the CLMP Lake Program Manager. Um, I work with MSU Extension on lake conservation. As you've seen, get emails from me through time on monthly reminders and other communications through the CLMP. And you also might get us out on the boat, as you can see here. And this is something that's a very common scene. If Joe or I or Tamara go onto your boat, is we're out there collecting data with you, talking with a bunch of folks, and being excited about your lake. Joe, would you like to give a little introduction?
Sure. Thanks, Eric, and good morning, everyone. It's great to see all of you on here. I am the director of MiCorps and also a faculty member in the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife at Michigan State University. And I've been involved with MiCorps kind of since the beginning of when we've called it MiCorps, and the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program is part of that. So that's been about 21 years now. So I just had the opportunity to be out on the water with a couple of our volunteer lakes yesterday, which was really great down in Van Buren and Elgin counties. So, but back on Zoom today, as often is the case, and excited to chat with you all today and give you some tips and tricks for being successful with your monitoring this summer.
All right. Thank you, Joe. And now we're going to just jump right in and just walk through a few things. Though the one thing I wanted to start off with is just our monitoring schedule. You're all chugging away, but there's some nice reminders coming up here. Just know for your Secchi disc monitoring, keep up. What we like to see is a minimum of every other week throughout the summer. So from mid-May through mid-September, collecting Secchi disc. If you want to collect more, you're more than welcome. You can collect it every week if you would like. You can see on your data sheets that that is an option, but at a minimum, every other week. And the reason why is ecological. Our lakes change and are quite dynamic through the summer months. And so to truly get an understanding of our water body during the growing season, and also to get a good summary of Secchi, it's great to have that spread of points that are equally spaced throughout the summer months to get that understanding. Soon, if many of you are signed up for summer phosphorus, that is collected just once, and it's either going to be in August or September. And it's collected at that deepest part of your lake. You go out there, you should all be getting your bottles around now. We are starting, Gene Roth on our team is shipping those out right now. And so if you haven't received a bottle the bottles yet, they should be coming soon. Um, and when you sample is prescriptive, and I'll show that on the next slide, is that we have a phosphorus schedule where it gives you specific dates for your county of when you collect and when you drop off. And this is why we collect at this time of year is also ecological. This is the height during the height of thermal stratification, where there is warm water sitting on top of cold water. And this is where we want to collect this information for phosphorus on the surface because it can help us understand external nutrient loading into it. So is phosphorus entering from outside of the lake into the lake? And is also used as a standard to know if your lake is oligotrophic, mesotrophic, or eutrophic. Chlorophyll is collected once per month. So if any of you are part of the chlorophyll uh, monitoring, collected once per month. We have the exact date spread that you do that. And although it is once per month for folks from the UP, it's a little different. And instead, they collect their final chlorophyll measurement at the end of August. And they also collect at the beginning of August as well. Dissolved oxygen temperature, much like SECI, is every other week throughout the summer. This again is ecological so that we would understand how thermal stratification is setting up in your lake and how that changes dissolved oxygen through time. The plant watch and score the shore and aquatic plant mapping, you can actually take the time that you need during the summer to conduct those surveys. So you can do it at any time. For the plant watch or aquatic plant mapping, it's good to do it now through August because the plants are in full force right now. And score the shore at any time. And you can take multiple days if you need to conduct those surveys. So as I mentioned for phosphorus and chlorophyll, we have a sampling schedule, and I'll send those off in our monthly reminders, but these are the documents that you can access on our website if you've misplaced them that are sent to you. So we have a summer phosphorus sample collection and turn-in schedule. So what you do is find the county that your lake is a part of. So let's say you're in Elgin County. You will be turning in your frozen summer phosphorus sample to this Eagle office at this address. And there's even a drop-off person if you need to contact. You'll be sampling that summer phosphorus sample between the dates of September 18th and 22nd, and you will be turning in those samples between 8 and noon on September 23rd. Um, that's the same for when you look at our chlorophyll sample collection and turn-in schedule. You look at if you're, again, just as an example, your lake is in Elgin County. Here's your turn-in address. You want to send these frozen vials that are completely covered in aluminum foil. You want to sample them within these given time periods. So May 10th through the 20th, then it goes June, July, August, September. Um, that final sample number 5 doesn't follow the 10th through the 20th. So please look at this schedule. It matters. We want this spread of points because, again, ecologically, different algae are doing different things at different times. And so that final sample, please look at your county and the sampling dates so that you can get into that correct sampling period. If you're really close, we'll flag that data in our database. But if you are multiple weeks away from these sampling periods, we'll have to reject the sample. Um, how do you get these? If you don't know where they are, you need a refresher. You can go to MiCorps.net. You go to Lakes, move to Lake Documents, and then we have our spring phosphorus data sampling schedule there, and the chlorophyll schedule is lower on the page. To talk a little bit about sample drop-off a little bit more, is that it is between all sample drop-off except for Ontonagon, Gogebic, Houghton, Keweenaw, and Baraga counties is from 8 to noon. So that is on the given day on the schedule. That is a very specific tight window. And the reason why is because we need to move those frozen samples to our team to get them ready for laboratory analysis. And to keep data quality high, they need to remain cold and frozen. And so that's why, we have such a tight window So all of that shipping can work because it is pretty amazing. All the bottles that are moving around the state for this program, getting ultimately to the Eagle laboratories to be analyzed. It's pretty neat. Now, if you are in Ontonagon, Gogebic, Houghton, Keweenaw, or Baraga County, due to shipping and how all that works in those counties, you need to the window's even a little tighter, which we apologize for, but it's how shipping and keeping data quality high. It is between 8 and 10 a.m. If the date and time doesn't work for you, like something comes up, that's always can happen, please contact me or Tamara Lipsy. You can also reach out to your drop-off location to see if you can drop them off early, for example. And I'm not saying months early because that we can lose track of samples, but it might be the day before or something like that. But you can work out those details if need be. But we really prefer you on that drop-off time. Again, sometimes our CLMP lakes are clustered together. So feel free to, if you can't make it to that drop-off date, you might be able to give it to another volunteer from a local lake near you. If you don't know who that could be, feel free to reach out to me and I will link you up with another volunteer and you can work together to get your samples to your drop-off location and you can make a nice CLMP friend, which is always great. And always feel free to contact us if you are having any issues. We're happy to work through any of those details. For those who collected spring phosphorus, hopefully your arms have thawed over the last couple months. And just know those have been submitted into the Eagle laboratories and they're being analyzed as we speak. Those data will be available later this summer, depending on just the load going through the Eagle laboratories. And I will send out uh, a quick email with a little bit of explanation on spring phosphorus with your individual lake data. I also in the past have made maps like this so you can see like, oh, it's not interactive, but you can be like, oh, this is my lake right there, and I'm oligotrophic. That's great. So just some fun information just to be able to compare yourself to other lakes in your area. But that will be coming out later this summer once it's analyzed by the laboratories. Um, Something just to keep in mind, moving away from just schedule, is where to sample. And so, as you know, or as you likely know, is that every lake in our system has a field ID. It is a unique number to your lake. And so, for example, Thousand Island Lake, the field ID is 270046. That is key. You put that onto your data sheets. It also makes sure the data is going into the right location. This also is associated with a latitude and longitude. And so much of our sampling outside of the plant watch and score the shore, we are sampling at the deepest location of the lake. This latitude and longitude here gets you to approximately the deepest part of the lake. And so if you don't know where to sample, take a look at MiCorps.net, hovering over lakes, and you go to CLMP documents. And in there is the CLMP Lake Sampling Site Field ID number list that you can go to and just double check. Are you close? Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we want to be sampling in the deepest part of the lake. If you find that a latitude longitude is wrong and you're like, no, it's over here, please contact me and we can work out those details. Just to talk, all of our parameters are closed. You can't join SekiDisc right now, for example, or if you haven't signed up for summer phosphorus, you cannot enroll in summer phosphorus right now. But there are two parameters that you can. You can still enroll in the plant watch and score the shore until August 31st. So if you are really interested in the early detection of invasive plants in your lake, or there's some questions happening from property owners about what this plant is and what that is, you can still join the Plant Watch. You can go back into your account. So you use your username and password that you created for your MiCorps account, and you can add this to your enrollment. You can also do that for Score the Shore, where if you're becoming more and more interested in how your lake shoreline might be changing, Score the Shore will be for you. And something that it's, old news, but still pretty new news is in Berrien County, hydrilla, a terrible invasive plant that's very aggressive, was found in 2023 in two private ponds. That's the first time this plant has been found in Michigan, and it put everybody on high alert. Um, Eagle, along with other partners, have been working diligently eradicating these two sites, but we don't know if it's spread from these sites. And so we just wanted to show, even if you're not in Southwest Michigan, just a glimpse at what this plant looks like. So while you're out on your lake, keep an eye up for a plant that looks like this. And what does this plant look like? Well, it kind of looks like our native Elodea, which is very common. It's a plant that has leaves whorled around the stem, and there's a bunch of leaves around the stem. There's four or more. Sometimes you'll find three, but it's four or more leaves around the stem. You can easily see the teeth on the edge of the leaf with your naked eye. And sometimes there's even teeth on the back side of the leaf, as you can see with this picture right here. If you are in Berrien, Cass, or Van Buren counties, we will waive your enrollment fee for the plant watch because we really want people to be looking for this plant in in those three counties in case it got away from just those two ponds. Please contact me if you have any questions or Joe Latimore about how you can get involved or if you have any questions. And just to emphasize what does this plant look like? Again, it has branching stems or single stems, four or more leaves on a whorl, teeth that you can see on the edge of the leaf. But I just wanted to show you there is a very big lookalike, and it's called Elodea. This is a nice native plant that we have in Michigan and it is in many of our lakes. This is not hydrilla. You can see that there are only three leaves per whorl. You can't easily see teeth on the edge. And just to kind of finish up with the plant watch is that if you get involved, we give you a lot of different education on plant identification. And then also, Joe and I are here to help you with your plant identification. And so we have these great laminated sheets. You can put your plants on there. It gives us a scale to compare to, and we can look at it to help with identification. If you are part of the plant watch and you suspect you found an invasive plant, you have to take a picture of it so that we can keep our data quality high and Joe and I go through and confirm yes or no, this is Eurasian water milfoil, for example. When you're taking a photograph, please show different features of the plant, not just a blob of the plant, because that could be difficult to identify, as you can imagine. And then a final note on Score the Shore. Our shorelines have changed dramatically, and shorelines play an important role in lake ecosystems. And so Score the Shore is a great way to document shoreline habitat, potential for erosion, development patterns, especially when you go through time. We don't recommend doing Score the Shore every single year because often our shorelines don't change that quickly, but they do change ever so many years. More development, houses go down, bigger homes get put in, so on and so forth. And just to show some of the dramatic change that can happen, here's an overlay from an image that you see right now, Portage Lake in Livingston County in 1938, and this is what it looks like today. So as you can see, quite a bit more docks in the picture and a lot of development. Of course, this was dramatic change that happened over the decades, but we still might see different patterns that occur if it going in a negative way, but also if your lake is starting to do positive things like put in natural shorelines, put in fish sticks, which is wood in the water. Score the Shore would be able to pick that up to document those positive changes that might be happening in your lake as well. So, Joe, I'll go on to mute and you can take it from here.
All right. Thanks, Eric. So yeah, we're gonna keep going with some tips and tricks for you. If you have questions, remember you can type things into the chat or you can speak up using your microphone. So, getting registered is important for all of our volunteers, not just those of you who are the lead volunteers. If you recall, we have two different classifications for volunteers in the CLMP. The lead volunteer is the person who is coordinating the monitoring on your lake. You are the person who gets all the communications from us. If you are receiving materials, they are sent to you as the lead volunteer. But on many lakes, we have teams of volunteers that are working. You have people that help you, and maybe it's just for 1 or 2 days out on the lake. They're stepping in and helping or joining to see what's going on. And we need those folks to register as well. We want to include our assisting volunteers for a number of reasons. First of all, we want to be able to acknowledge the service that all of our volunteers, everybody who is helping, are contributing to the program. We want to be able to know how many people across the state of Michigan are actually volunteering for our program. That's really important when we're justifying the continuation of this program, is knowing how many people are involved and are impacted by the program and helping collect this really important data. It also gives us an opportunity to make sure that everybody who's participating signs the liability waiver that just points out that there are a few minor risks that may be involved with going out on a boat and collecting data. And so everybody who signs up has to sign on that waiver just to keep that paperwork flowing through too. So if you're the lead volunteer on your lake and you have people helping you, make sure that you're communicating with the assisting volunteers. Make sure that they are trained and see the training videos or are trained by you. You may recall that all of our training videos are updated every year and available on the MiCorps website. So the screenshot shows that if you go on our lake training page, you can see where the recorded presentations are and even a PDF of the slide decks. So you'll be able to find all of that there. And even the recording of today's Midsummer check-in will be on that page. Right now, last year's is on there, but in the next week or so, we'll record this and put this one on there as well. So to make sure that we can give credit where credit is due and know where all of our assisting volunteers are working, in addition to registering within CLMP, assisting volunteers also need to add their lake to their account. If you're the lead volunteer, you've done this. When you go to enroll your lake, you sign in and you choose your lake in our system, and we know that you're the volunteer for that lake. Assisting volunteers need to do that too. After they've put in their account, they can sign into their account using their username and password, and then they will see the screen right there where you can see the cursor moving around, and that gives you a chance to add lakes to your account. You click that Start Here button, and then you can collect your lake and make that way we know. Because what I'll find is when I look in our list of assisting volunteers in our database, well over half of our assisting volunteers say no lakes. They have no lakes associated with their effort. So we don't know what lakes they're working on. So that's really important. So make sure your assisting volunteers take that little extra step. It only takes a couple extra minutes. Data entry. This is really important. And in fact, it's going to be more important than ever this year. Many of you have worked through the years with Jean Roth on our team for Michigan Lakes and Streams Association. And she does the bulk of the work of entering data that volunteers don't enter themselves. We always ask that our volunteers enter their own data, but not everyone does. And so it has taken in the past, Jean, weeks to months to get all of that data entered from hundreds and hundreds of lakes. You can imagine that's a pretty big undertaking when you have to do it all yourself. Well, Jean is retiring this fall from her decades of service to the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program. So we really need the help of all of our volunteers to step up and enter their data by the end of October. October 31st is always the deadline for data entry. And it's quite straightforward to find where to enter your data. On our homepage, if you click on Data Exchange, you will see two choices. One of them is Enter Data. So click on that. And then right at the very top of the page that takes you to, there's a button that says Lakes. Just click on Lakes, and that'll take you to step 3. You will see a list of all the lakes that you are qualified to enter data for. For most of you, that'll just be one lake, the one lake that you volunteer for. So just click on the name of your lake, And that will open up a data entry screen like you see on the right hand side of your screen right now. And you'll see some lake site information. It's always good to glance at that and make sure it really is your lake that you're entering data for. And then you can enter a new sample, and that means whatever parameter you want to enter data for. So that might be Secchi disk. So you would click on the blue box that says Secchi, and you can enter a Secchi reading. And you don't have to wait till the end of the season to do this. You can enter your Secchi data, every time you enter it. You can go back on your computer that day and enter that reading. That works really nicely, and that way you don't have a lot of data to enter at the end of the season. One thing that we found when we were reviewing the data from last year is that overall, our volunteers are really good at entering data for some of the parameters. What we see is, though, most volunteers are not currently entering their data for their phosphorus and their chlorophyll samples. And I think that's because those are handled a little differently. If you do phosphorus or chlorophyll, you know that you send a copy of your data sheet in with your frozen samples for us to analyze. So you don't actually have the result. However, you do have all the information about the day you collected, who was involved, the lake conditions, how was the weather, all of that kind of stuff. And we need that all entered as well. So we need that to be entered in the system before we can add the lab results. So we're asking for everybody to please take a few minutes after you've collected your phosphorus or your chlorophyll samples to go through this process and enter that field data. So when the lab data comes in, we can match it up in the database and have it ready for you to see. You can always go in and check your data. Let's say you entered your data, but you're not sure, you realize maybe you made a mistake when you were entering the data, or maybe you just want to go back and look at the data. We find that many of our volunteers don't realize not only can you enter the data, but you can view the data. Remember that other choice when you click on Data Exchange on the home page is View Data. So if you click on View Data, like you see with the cursor there, that will take you to the screen that you see on the right. And you can choose how you want to look at data. And you'll see you can look at our stream data too, but for today's conversation, we're thinking about lake data. So you can click on lakes, and for most people, click on name because you're going to search by name. You can also search by county and other things, but you can just type in the name of your lake. I think we're using Badger here as an example, and then click on Badger to add it to the list on the right. And then you can choose the date range and which parameters you want to see. So in this case, we're looking at all the Secchi disk data for Badger Lake. And then you can leave data tier as is and then click view results. And all of the data for your lake, for Badger Lake Secchi, will appear on the screen. You can also download it as an Excel file if you wish to save the data to your computer for future use. And here is an example of what results will look like. It's a little different search. It's not just for Badger Lake here, but you can see we've got data for Hubbard Lake, Duck Lake, Green Lake. There are various Secchi data. And if you want to see the Secchi, the details of any particular reading, you can just click on that underlined date on the screen, and that will show you all the details of that particular measurement. We just had a question show up on the chat from Catherine, and it's a really good one. Her question was, please remind me whether you prefer all data to be entered when you collect it or at the end of the season. And I'll say we don't necessarily have a preference in most cases, but it's going to probably be easier for you if you just do it right after you collect it, then you don't have to remember whether you did it or not. The one case where it is really valuable to have you enter it right away is spring phosphorus. If you're involved with spring phosphorus, we need that entered a little earlier because the lab data comes to us a little earlier. So I'd encourage folks to, if you can, enter it as you go through the season. But if you can't do it until October or something, that's better than not doing it at all. I will say, related to that question, is that if it's November 1st, say you're like, oh no, it was the October 31st deadline, I forgot, it's November 1st, I'll go in and enter it now. We ask that you not do that. Because after that deadline, then we start entering data, and then we might both end up entering the same data, and then we have duplicate records in the database, which we then have to go find and clean up. So October 31st, if you don't make that deadline, then we'll take over from there. Good question. All right, moving away from the computer and a little bit more with actual sampling and how you're handling your samples. It's really important to follow all of our protocols, including making sure that when you're collecting samples for phosphorus and chlorophyll, that you use the containers and materials that we send you. For example, for phosphorus, we send you clean bottles that don't have any contaminants in them. If you lose your bottles or don't receive your bottles, please don't use a replacement container like this actual photo of a Parmesan cheese container that someone sent us a water sample in once because they couldn't find their bottles. As you might suspect, we couldn't accept this sample. We had to throw it out. So it wasn't worth the volunteers' time to actually go out and collect the sample. And we want to make the best use of your time. So if you lose a bottle or you're missing something you think you should have, contact us. We can get you stuff quickly. If something isn't available or it's broken or it's lost, we can help you with that. And related to that, I think Eric already mentioned it once, but we always get a lot of questions every summer about summer phosphorus bottles and folks being concerned that they haven't received them yet. That's okay. We don't send them out until a little later in the summer, and so they'll be coming in the next few weeks. Most of you will be sampling in September or the very end of August, so you've got plenty of time to receive those bottles. Another thing that we see a lot is labels that are completely illegible, like the one you see in the photo. I think someone must have used a ballpoint pen or something that wasn't waterproof to write on their bottle. And so we have no idea whose sample this is or what lake it came from. Hopefully, they packaged it with their data sheet and we were able to get the information we need off their data sheet. But then we have to add a new label and fix that. In some cases, people also forget their data sheet, and then we have no idea whose bottle this is, and we'll probably have to discard it. So make sure that you're using a pencil or a waterproof pen or marker to fill out your labels and all of your paperwork. And again, a note on there, I jumped ahead of myself a little bit, but your phosphorus bottles for summer will be sent out as we speak. Chlorophyll. Those of you who are sampling for chlorophyll, we get a few of these errors every year. Is people use the separator sheets that are between the filters to do their filtration instead of the filter themselves. So generally, the word is that blue is bad. If don't use the bluish tinted kind of tissue paper looking discs, those are not the filters. The filters are white circles. They look like you can't see through them, but trust us, there are tiny holes in them. Use those kind of white plastic looking discs. Those are the filters you should be using. So be careful about that. We know when somebody uses the wrong thing in their samples. Because what happens is even if you can push a little water through, which you can probably make it work if you push on your syringe hard enough. And you send that sample into us. When it goes to the Eagle laboratory for analysis, it will fail the analysis because we end up dissolving the filter in a solvent during the process, and the separator sheets won't dissolve. And so there's debris in the sample that gives us a bad reading. And so we have to reject those samples. So make sure you're using those white filters. Another tip for chlorophyll sampling, don't push too hard on your syringe. You might remember during training, we talk about a rapid drip rate. We don't want the water squirting out of the syringe in a stream. We want it in a very fast drip, 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 like that. If you push too hard, you risk tearing your filter. We get calls every year about people worried that they got a bad batch of filters because they keep ripping. The filter is fine. It's just that you're over enthusiastic with your squeezing. So make sure that you just get that rapid drip rate to filter the water through, and you'll be in great shape. Make sure, as we mentioned in the training with chlorophyll, you have to wrap those vials before you put them in the freezer in aluminum foil. That keeps all the light out. Chlorophyll reacts with light, as we know. That's how photosynthesis happens. Sunlight hits those cells, and the chlorophyll starts doing chemical reactions. We don't want any more chemical reactions. So be sure to wrap your vials in foil. Otherwise, we do have to reject those samples. However, you don't have to wrap your phosphorus bottles in foil. We get a few of those every year, and that's okay. It doesn't hurt anything, but it just is unnecessary. So, no need to wrap phosphorus in foil. Just make sure those little chlorophyll vials are wrapped if you're doing chlorophyll this year. All right, data forms. Data forms are critical, really important for us to have these. It's important to fill out all of the blanks on your data sheet. Make sure that you're entering all the information. Even if you've been in the program for 20 years, we want the information because every sample needs to have a complete data sheet that follows along with it for quality control. Um, Eric, if you could click, I want to show the back of the data sheet too. So what we see the most is people not filling out the back of the data sheet. And it's really important. I would say from this spring's turn in, probably 20% of the volunteers did not fill out the back of the data sheet. So please remember to do that. At the top, we ask you to fill in the name and details of your lake again. And that's because all of these data sheets get scanned into a database and the front and the back are different files. So if they get separated, we don't know if you don't fill out the back and the name of your lake, we don't know whose back of whose data sheet that is. So make sure you fill that out. Enter the surface area of your lake if known, and then include a map of your lake and where your sampling site is, and right there how deep the lake is at that site. So this example is a great one. There's a star where the sampling site is, and it says 30 feet deep. That information is really important. It's amazing how many times each year Eric and I are looking back at data sheets and checking those maps to make sure that we know that the volunteer sampled in the right location, or we can make adjustments. And when we go to the data sheet and find that it's blank, we get sad and deflated. And you don't want your CLMP team to be sad and deflated. You want us to be happy with your data sheet. So make sure that there's a map. It can be a simple map. You don't have to be an artist. And some people even just attach a copy of a map that they, copied from a map or an atlas or something. You can do that too. You can attach a map if that's easier than drawing one. And then finally, be sure after you've completed everything that you submit a copy to us of your data sheet. You don't want to just keep it for yourself and not give us a copy. Or on the other hand, we also get situations where people send us the original and don't keep a copy of for themselves. So you'll want to make a copy. So we have a copy and you have a copy. All right, a couple reminders about dissolved oxygen monitoring. Remember that they do need a few minutes to calibrate, so you'll want to turn your meter on about 15 minutes before you go and ready to calibrate and sample your or collect your sample. So turn your meters on while you're getting ready to go out on the boat, so they'll be ready to calibrate quickly for you. At the probe end, there is a protective sleeve that goes over the probe at the end of the cable, and there's a little sponge in the bottom of that chamber. Make sure that it stays damp. You don't want it full of the whole chamber full of water, but that sponge should be damp to keep your probe working well. When you collect your data, make sure that you're reading in milligrams per liter and not percent saturation. And you'll see that you can toggle back and forth on the meter between mg/L or percent. We want your data in milligrams per liter, not percent. And also make sure that when you collect your temperature that it's reading in degrees Celsius and not degrees Fahrenheit. Some other kind of care and maintenance of your meter, be nice to the cables. Those are the first things to break on these meters. If your meter is not working well, there's a good chance that there's a problem with the cable. And that often happens because they get crimped or bent or otherwise handled roughly while being used, or maybe closed in the case when it's shut. So make sure you're gentle with the cable, no hard bends, no pinching the cable, not holding the meter by the cable and swinging it around. Like just make sure that you're careful with those cables. They cost many hundreds of dollars to replace, and it also takes time to get replacement cables. So please be careful with your cable. And then finally, let your meter and cable dry out completely before you close the case. Especially those of you who have the hard cases for your dissolved oxygen meters, those cases are waterproof. So any moisture that's on the meter will not dry out if the case is closed. And we have had situations where meters are returned to us and they're very moldy inside, which is not good for the meter or for us. So make sure that everything dries out before you close it up and put it away. All right, another couple, when you're out in the field collecting your dissolved oxygen readings, you want to be out there on a calm day and anchored so your boat isn't moving around because you need to stay in one place while you're taking your reading. And this diagram is not completely realistic. We suspect few of you are sampling from your sailboat, but you do want to be anchored down and not moving because you want the probe of your cable to be going straight down to the bottom and not on an angle as your boat keeps moving while you're collecting those readings because it takes a few minutes to collect all these readings throughout the water column. So make sure you're anchoring. And the other thing is to make sure you know how deep the lake is at your sampling spot because you don't want the probe end to hit the bottom of the lake. If it hits the sediment, if it gets sediment on it, that can cause some problems. So measure your depth and then collect your readings and stop collecting readings 2 feet or so below before you hit the bottom so you don't drag the probe in the mud at the bottom of the lake. All right. Secchi disc measurements. You can type your answer in the chat. For where do you measure your Secchi measurement? Do you take the reading on the tape from the top of the boat or from the top of the water? You can enter A if you take your measurement from the top of the boat, B if you measure what it reads on the tape at the top of the water. Give people a minute to type things in. Got some answers coming in. I see B, 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 top of the water, B. Very good, everyone. You know what you're talking about. We do sometimes see people that, look where their hand is on the tape, like this volunteer is, and write down that. That's not what you want. You want to take the measurement from the water's surface. So that's how you measure Secchi. And then there's one other thing in that picture that the volunteer is doing wrong. Does anybody know what the problem is? Could type it in the screen. Yeah, Will, good job. Sunglasses, glasses, good eye, everyone. Yeah, don't wear sunglasses while you're measuring Secchi disc, especially polarized glasses, but any sunglasses will make it easier to see the disc. And so we want to know what your eyes see, not with the aid of sunglasses. So make sure you take off your sunglasses before you take those Secchi disc readings and take the measurement from the water's surface. All right. We want to make sure that everybody knows if you need a refresher, you can go to our website, micorps.net, click on lakes and then lake training. And you go to the lake training page, and all of our training videos and slideshows are there for you. You can watch them over again for a quick refresher. We know a lot of our volunteers have been in the program for a long time, and maybe you haven't come to an in-person training in a while or haven't done a live training. You can rewatch those videos. You can even fast forward to the section that you're interested in, and you'll find all the information you need there. And of course, you can always contact us with any questions that you have. As we're wrapping up here, I wanted to quickly mention many of you are probably aware that we recently ended our first ever MiCorps Aquatic Invasive Species Detection Blitz. Chelsea Cooper is on the call today. She helped us put that together, and it was a big success. We had 101 people join the project and had a lot of great reports of aquatic invasive species across the state. You can see a list of the most commonly reported species. Maybe not surprisingly, Eurasian water milfoil was most commonly, it was the top reported species. We're going to be putting together a summary report of all the data that we got from that. We're still going through it, but we appreciate everyone who participated, and we'll be sharing that report out through our MiCorps email list and website in the coming weeks. All right. Now we have time. We're here until 11 o'clock if you want us to be, so we can answer any questions you might have. We've kept up on everything in the chat, so there's nothing there, but you can, as we said before, you can type things in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask questions. We ask that you keep the questions focused on the CLMP. If you have questions generally about lake management, you can always reach out to us at a separate time. So thanks, everybody. All right. I see
We
one question that came in to me that says, is it important to jiggle the probe during dissolved oxygen and temperature measurements? It helps. That's a really good question. And it does help. What we find is that you need to have water moving across the membrane in the probe to collect a stable measurement. And just wiggling it a little bit, just gently, will keep fresh water up against that probe. And you'll find that your reading tends to stabilize a little more quickly that way. So it definitely helps. Otherwise, you may see your measurement keeps changing as you're looking at it and it doesn't really stabilize.
I received a couple questions too, and it was about the field ID and where to sample for the deepest location. I'm just moving to it so folks can see. So if you go to the MiCorps.net, our webpage, to lakes, CLMP documents is what you'll choose, and it'll be CLMP lake sampling site number list. And that's where they'll find that information. Okay.
Larry, I see your question in there, and that might be a little bit outside of what we can cover for you regarding wake boats, it looks like, on your lake. And so maybe this is something we can talk to you directly about if you want to shoot one of us an email or just to mycore@msu.edu, and we'll get back to you.
Any other questions or any fun things you've seen on your lakes this summer so far? Or I'll ask, I have a little poll question for folks. Has anyone had a Secchi reading over 30 feet this early summer? How about over 25 feet? Oh, how about 20 feet?
Like Catherine, heavens
Heavens
no.
no.
I was on a lake yesterday that they're at about 3 feet. They've been at 3 feet all summer.
Anyone under
Yeah.
a foot or under.
Yeah. I see a
We
20
do.
foot from Laura there at the beginning of the summer.
Nice. 16 is max. That's nice.
Lake Macatawa was a foot and a half yesterday. Hmm. Hmm.
Sounds about right.
We have a couple lakes in the program that consistently will get around that, depending on the time of year, around a 1 foot Secchi.
All right, I just saw a question come in from Pete. If our environmental consultants performed a lake scan for aquatic invasive species, can this info be used by the CLMP? And if yes, how can we send in the data? That's a great question, Pete. We're only set up to accept data collected by our volunteers. It's a great resource for you. I'm glad you have that data from your consultants, and that's really helpful for your lake as far as making management decisions and conservation decisions. But we're not set up to accept outside data into the program. We get that question quite a bit. Another question, maybe this is a good one for Eric and or Tamara. Laura says, my lake isn't on the list for Latin long.
Yes, so I was just typing the in the chat. So Laura, send me an email and we can work through looking at a couple maps, also with your local knowledge as well of the lake, and we can look into that um, and get that information.
Okay, I've just been guessing. There's a lot of other people with more local knowledge, but there's I'm in the area where they say it's 85 feet. But I'm just not sure. So,
There's my email, and we can have those discussions. We can start those discussions and get to that point then.
okay, thanks.
I have a question about data interpretation that we could, if people are interested. So on one of these lakes, the Secchi reading dropped from 20 feet to 8 feet and was visibly less. And the dissolved oxygen dropped also. What could this indicate, and is this normal? That's a very interesting. I'll just start it. That's really fascinating. That is really fast change, and I would be very curious. I would be asking lots of other questions about what might be happening. The first one is, did a heavy rainfall occur? So is there some sort of weather driven change that could have been happening where 2 inches of rainfall fell in 24 hours and a bunch of runoff came in and also can mess around with thermal stratification because it's cold rainwater coming in. Um, so um, Mark, feel free to email me also, and we can talk about that. And we can also wait until a little bit more data comes in from your CLMP monitoring so we can see how things might be rebounding or just changing.
Will do. Thanks, Eric.
Tamara, here's a question for a YSI. This person's dissolved oxygen meter seems to never stabilize. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just how the numbers kind of bounce around.
Yeah. Sometimes, so I did my own dissolved oxygen and temperature monitoring for Eagle on Lake Makatawa yesterday, and we have um different meters, but they're still YSI meters. And they never really truly always settle down to nothing. So when I've been out with people on side by sides, I'll just give an example. Maybe the dissolved oxygen is going from 5.56 to 5.66 to 5.76 to 5.66 to 5.46. And, those tenths of change are really not ecologically that different from each other. So in that case, I would just choose one of the middle of those tenths. As long as you're getting, to the tenths. And even if you're having trouble, maybe it's 5.2 and 5.4 and 5.6 and 5.9 and 5.2. Again, if you go to the middle of that, that's fine. It does take some time. I think people are maybe sometimes a little surprised that it takes time, but there were some, especially at the shallower, it tends to get, tend to settle down more as you get deeper in the water column, but at the surface where you have wave action and things, it can take, 5 minutes or so for a number to settle down sometimes. So I think that might sometimes surprise people and is that's why we say you need an anchor if you're going to do dissolved oxygen and temperature because you're probably going to be there for a while, especially if you have a deep lake.
Okay, any other questions regarding your lake and CLMP sampling? Well, we really appreciate all of your efforts. It's amazing the data that you collect on your individual lakes and then collectively what CLMP volunteers can collect. It's mind-boggling when we start looking at the rows of data. Joe showed that you can search for data within our database and you can download them into Excel, and it is impressive the sheer amount of, for example, Secchi data that is collected annually, but then over the last 51 years, the amount of rows of data that we now have so we can understand the course changes or the lack of course changes that are happening in our water bodies. It's really incredible. And so, and I always love looking at some of these data. So if you've just started, it's a great aspirational goal to keep going. and working with others to help to keep going. That's something that we always like to mention is teamwork makes the dream work, right? Is what my 7-year-old says. So um, it's if you can get others involved, it's a great way for people to really appreciate their lake and to continue on the process of data collection through time. And so, again, if there's any other questions, we can stay on just for a moment longer. But if not, again, thank you all very much. All right. Joe, Tamara, do you have any closing parting words?
Just repeating your thanks and appreciation for everything the volunteers do on all summer long. Thank you all so much for your interest and care for your lake.
Ditto.
Take care, everybody.